Hey everyone, it's Daniel Roytas here from Humanley. Thanks again for joining me. Today I'm here with Robbie Thompson, and I spoke with Robbie probably a couple of months ago and was really interested in the work he's doing. He's a vibrational wizard. He's into sound healing, which is something that I've been looking into a little bit over the last sort of 6 to 12 months. And I know, Robbie, you've been in this sort of area for quite a while now, and I
Yes.
think you're probably the best guy to talk to because I think there's definitely some incredible value to sound healing, and I'd really like to find out more about what it is and how it can be used to heal people. So, yeah, thanks so much for coming along, mate.
Thanks for having me, Daniel.
So maybe if you want to give a little bit of background about what got you into this and your history and your journey through sort of natural or alternative therapies.
Yeah, fantastic. When I was 13, all I wanted to be was a guitarist, originally more a heavy rock guitarist. And I worked on a paper round and saved up enough money for an $80 guitar. And so that's where kind of my music journey began. I always dreamed about being in Guitar Player magazine or something like that, and yeah, that was my dream to achieve, and to be signed and be flown around the planet playing with rock bands. But as that dream took off and I pursued writing music and joining bands and co-writing with other singers, I quickly found out that after I started to get to know people who were becoming more famous in the music industry, that they got signed to labels, and then the label seems to own them, if you know what I mean. The writer of the song is lucky to get 10 cents an album, and they're told where to go, when to go. So they're kind of owned. They're told when to play on stage, where to play. And so fast forward many years, I hit my 40s, and I realized I got back into music. I'd given it up for many years after having kids and being told by well-meaning friends and family, get a real job. And so I did. I worked in the Royal Children's Hospital for years, and started, because I'm a life path 11, I'm quite psychic. It's the psychic master number, and I've always had a affinity with things the other side, and listen to messages that I get, whether some people call it their angels, some people call it God, some people call it people who've passed over from the other side. But I listen to the messages I get, and I had a strong message that music was still always in my path. So at the Royal Children's Hospital, then leaving there after 8 years, and becoming a property investor and renovating properties, started a business mentoring people on the Gold Coast how to build their own online businesses from scratch. So, and we had a few courses. One was called Website in a Day. So we teach people how to build a website in a day. And all that while I loved what I did. I loved learning new things, but I felt what was missing was the music side of things and doing what I truly love, which is vibrational. So all that time while I was running things like the Gold Coast Business Club, which we had 3,500 members, and networking events, and teach people and train people how to build business, pretty soon I became really overweight. I was drinking a lot, got to about 120 kilos, was drinking a hell of a lot, and I didn't feel that successful. So for me, I realized success is in the heart rather than in the pocket. And because I'd renovated all these properties, friends thought I was successful, but in actual fact, I feel like I bought into the dream of keeping up with the Joneses. So I could never go on a holiday because, I was always, I'd get sometimes 8 rates bills in the mail, and it seemed like that world felt like a trap to me. My marriage fell apart because I was drinking so heavily. I was going down the wrong path. I remember one day in my business, I made $10,000 in sales in a week, and on our training programs. And I remember the first thing I thought is, how do I make 20 grand? Because that's $1 million a year. And,
Right.
it never ends that way, does it? And it becomes kind of like greed. So then when my marriage fell apart, I ended up getting a camper van and just traveling town to town and going back to what I loved. Now my kids are a bit older, and I was traveling town to town and playing guitar busking. And I realized when I was doing busking, some people look down on you and think of it almost in a way that you're begging or something like that. But for me, the calling was to spread the love, the tunings, alternate tunings I've learned, which we can talk about later. And I found I had a real passion for just pulling up wherever I chose in the street and performing. And kids would come up, or old people, and I'd see this light in their eyes, and I'd see in the young children, I'd see their faces light up like I did in the 80s when I was holding my mum's hand and went up top of Magic Mountain in the Gold Coast, and I saw Tommy Emmanuel busking out the front. Now he's one of the most greatest guitarist Australia's ever seen, but he was a young fella about 18 years old busking at the time. And now I see that in kids' faces, and I love doing that. But then it evolved as I learnt these tunings, and I was able to live town to town and live without job or government supports. I found every town I'd pull up, I'd open my case, start playing, and the way I describe it, happy fairies would dance around me and put gold and notes in my case. And it was always enough. You know, people will say to me, "Oh, how you do?" And I always say, always enough. And that's all I felt I needed. But then I felt a strong calling to teach these as I was recording albums and putting them out, to teach other musicians if they were willing to listen. Obviously, I'm not going to force my opinions or the ancient tunings I'm learning on musicians who aren't ready, and many aren't. In fact, many classically trained musicians are dead against hearing anything other than the tunings they've been taught, which if you do your research, I don't want to go into too much now, but those tunings were of negative resonance to the body. So most of the music we listen to these days, and that comes out especially from the Hollywood arms of the music industry, is tuned to 440 hertz, which in my research does negative things to our body. It's not in line with nature in any way. So I always look at it like this. There was a few things done to our earth to keep us a bit more repressed, it might be. And that was rubber-soled shoes to stop us earthing. Yep. You've heard of earthing barefoot in nature is really important. In fact, most days, every day I'm barefoot now. Another one is fluoride in our water, which is now, it's been known for many, many years. Even in, the Lancet journal, the medical journal, decades ago was announced that it was a chemical neurotoxin. So it damages our brain and blocks our pineal gland from being able to evolve further and have more access to our imagination, to our flow state. And the third one, I believe, is our musical tunings were changed to keep vibration lower, to keep us in a state of disease, which is the body just out of ease, out of frequency, correct frequency. So when we align more up to the correct frequencies, what I found was when I was playing town to town busking, people were coming up to me, like one lady in Geelong, when I was down in Victoria playing, and she'd been listening in the car park, and she came up to me and she said, I've got bipolar, and normally I sit in my car just dreading going into the shop. And she said, I heard your music playing, and it's the first time I felt like I don't need my medication.
Wow.
Another guy in Gladstone, I remember he was pacing around when he was listening to me chain smoking. He listened to my whole set I was playing. And then at the end, he bought one of my albums, my first album, just called 17 Songs in 432 Hertz. And months later, I get this message, "Do you remember me?" And it started out, after "Do you remember me?" It started out, "My girlfriend's not going to leave me anymore." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, you remember how I was pacing around and chain smoking? I do that all night, and I haven't been able to sleep. I'm an insomniac." And she got sick of it. She could hear me pacing around, smell the cigarettes all night, and I'd light cigarette after cigarette. And he said, "That night I went home, I put on your album, because it's tuned to 432 hertz, which is more aligned with our body and nature. And I was able, for the first time I can remember, to sleep for 8 hours." And then he repeated, "Now my girlfriend's not going to leave me."
Wow.
And yes, so many other instances happened. So that's what led me to realize I'm prepared now to write books about this stuff, run courses and teach this stuff to musicians who want to learn, or even we've taught people who have never even picked up an instrument and now have become sound healers.